Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Everyday Night. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jeff. Today
And
we're talking about what everybody's talking about,
yeah,
protests and the responses to the protests.
and the causes for the protests.
Yeah.
And we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about this because this directly impacts on the virtues. So,
Yes.
Jeff, I know I've got a drink and I don't think it's nearly strong enough. It's a nice glass of California rosé with some frozen berries in it because it was hot today.
uh, well, I'm pouring mine now. I'm not sure there is a drink strong enough to be
Yeah.
appropriate for the situation,
Yes.
but I have my usual.
That's interesting. It's sort of the beer glass of invisibility there.
I tried to keep it in front of me so you could see it.
Yeah, it just made you kind of invisible. There you go. Oh, arrogant.
Oh, okay.
So, um, so without going into a great history of everything that's happened, clearly we're talking about the death of George Floyd at the hands of police officers and the protests in response to that and the police response to the protests. And the it's to clarify, the death of George Floyd is not it's the straw. It's the last straw. It's not the only thing. There have been so many deaths of unarmed African Americans coming at the hands of police. A woman who's an EMT who was shot in her own apartment because the police broke in the wrong place. A guy who was jogging, killed by a former cop, and he was hunted. It's just, and I don't want to go through the whole litany of it because that would take all our time to do. And people are well.
Oh yeah, and it's not everybody knows what we're talking about. It's not necessary
Yes.
to bring this all back up. We know what the problem is.
Yes.
We know what the protests are about.
Yes. And
this isn't about a single incident.
What people are asking for is finally real change. Real change. Right. And the people who are saying, well, protest peacefully. Yeah, because look what Colin Kaepernick got when he knelt and protested peacefully. And so many other instances of that. And clearly, as everybody can see, neither of us is African American, but we have people we consider brothers and sisters who are.
Yeah.
Who we're very close to, and who I know I've talked to about this, and they're concerned for their own safety, they're concerned for their children and their friends and their family, that the same way my parents, having grown up during World War II and heard of essentially the Holocaust, and having relatives who died in pogroms in Europe earlier than that, cautioned me about being aware, has not a touch, not a whiff of the concern that our friends who are African American have for their children and the cautions they give them.
Right. And we can't, saying, we sympathize and we feel for you and we see you and all that stuff. It's all we can do. We mean it, but it's not that meaningful in the end.
Yes.
Really. And
we can listen, we can say, we're here for you, we're here to support you, but real change is going to be very difficult. The history of the United States is absolutely steeped in racism.
But you can go back through history and you can see steps. You can see positive changes have happened after huge upheavals like this.
Yes.
And they're about 100 years apart,
Yeah.
Actually a
Well,
little bit premature in the 100-year cycle of justice in this country.
well, yeah. I mean, the Civil War and then the Civil Rights Movement of the 1960s.
Right.
But
So we go from the 1770s to the 1860s to the 1960s. And now here we are at 2020 that we're accelerating. I guess we should take heart in that.
yeah, I think the backlash is also accelerating. And honestly, it has to do with that motherfucker Trump who's in the
Yep.
White House. And if any of you don't agree with me and you think that he's your guy, then fuck you too.
This is, and this is a thing I've been struggling with all week. That I was never. This came to me today as I was driving home from work, because I've gone back to work now. Is that I was never afraid of the government until the people who were afraid of the government got their hands on the government.
Yes.
It's insane.
Government doesn't work. Elect us and we'll prove it. Except it is working for their agenda.
Yes.
For their agenda of bleeding the country dry, enriching themselves and their cronies, and completely unregulated crony capitalism, and pandering to this complete aberration of Christian theology that's dominionist and right wing, and the people who are the authoritarian wannabes and authoritarian followers, but
well, and this is it, Joe. This for me, what it always is for me, is the hypocrisy of it.
Yes.
And the hypocrisy of the supporters of this kind of thing, who all these guys who are, masturbating in their gun closets in their basements about, well, I got to amass these guns in case the government turns out they're authoritarian and tries to tell me what to do. Well, where are you guys? Where are you?
They're the real hardcore ones, the Boogaloo boys and the Proud Boys and all those right-wing white supremacist anarchist motherfuckers are out there, and they're causing a lot of the violence and destruction and looting that is, I know that people have said and they quote Dr. King saying that a riot is the voice of the oppressed, or I'm paraphrasing badly, but except by and large, the protests have been peaceful, except until
they're accelerated by law enforcement.
Yes.
Usually.
Well, and accelerationists are another form of this thing where they're going out and they found, I've seen photos, a guy with a sledgehammer in his backpack, strapped to his backpack, guys with incendiary devices and in their backpacks and stuff, and all because they're looking for destruction. And some of them may just be adolescent, nihilist, dumbasses. Yeah. But the blaming this on Antifa, who, they may or may not be part of it, but part of doing that. But I don't think they're going after damaging property. They're looking for these fascist supporters.
Well, Antifa is yet another excuse by narrow-minded conservative dipshits. Yes. Who want to, oppression's okay as long as you're oppressing the right people.
Yes.
This is what pisses me off about all these people who are talking about, the government's going to do it to you if you don't do it first. The government is doing it to us, people. That's where we are now. You have elected someone who is going to take away the rights of American citizens. Just because they're not the American citizens that live next to you, you're going to say it's okay, and you're going to make excuses. And that's cowardly.
Exactly. So we talk about the virtues. We talk about the chivalric virtues, the application of the modern day. And this is absolutely an example of how the virtues are violated on a daily basis. Dishonesty, honesty is a virtue. The lies from elected officials about this, the lies from right-wing pundits, the lies from Fox News and televangelists, absolute dishonesty and hypocrisy. There's a lack of courage in this. It's cowardly. And I know people who have said, well, I don't want to talk about this. Well, you've talked about this plenty. You've run your mouth off plenty. Now, when people are pushing back on it, well, I don't want to talk about it.
Well, and you know what? I will even allow that. There may have been people on the left that have been who become so frustrated and so stifled that they have acted out.
Yeah.
I'll even allow that.
Yep.
It still does not justify the things I've seen filmed of cops just walking into a crowd, shoving people down to the ground, walking into a crowd of people just kneeling there, grabbing who's just kneeling there 10 yards away.
Yes.
There's a video out there you can watch, probably a commander or a sergeant or something walking around a bunch of guys, and he gives them all the word, and then at one point they part, they walk out, they grab them, they cuff them, and they drag him back behind the line, and we don't know what happens to him after that.
Yep. I saw there was an old man with a cane, and he was walking along. He did not appear to be part of the protest. He was just on the sidewalk, and the police were trying to move him back. And he turned him around. Another cop came up behind him with a shield and body slammed him in the back, and he fell down. Now, I will say the other cops helped him up, but there were people. There was a curfew. They were people who were obeying the curfew. They were on their porch. The curfew said you have to be on your property or your place of residence, not that you had to be inside. And they're cops going up the street with an armored vehicle.
Yeah.
And cops turn and they shoot at them and hit them. They're using paintballs or I don't know if it's paintball, pepper ball, rubber bullet, and shot at them.
Yeah, they're pepper pellets.
Huh?
They're pepper pellets.
Yeah, and you can hear one of them say, "Light them up." It's like,
yeah,
are you?
What fucking video game are you playing?
Yes, yes. Barney Fife given weapons,
given an M60 machine gun.
Yeah, I there's a reason that Sheriff Andy didn't let him have a bullet.
We let him have one bullet, but he had to keep it in his shirt pocket.
Exactly.
He wasn't allowed to keep it in the gun.
And your comment about the fetishizing of weaponry. You and I both own firearms.
Sure. I own the number of guns I think is appropriate to my level of danger in the society.
Yeah, it's well, yeah, but it's not fetishizing it. And I don't have any objection to collectors too. I think these things are mechanically
oh, sure.
Cool.
I mean, I can appreciate a cool gun, but
yeah, but the
I don't need to own 50 of them.
Yeah. And it's the same assholes who were protesting the stay-at-home order, and they were on the steps of the Capitol building in their armament and in their armor, their body armor, their weaponry, it's like, oh
yeah, and they were allowed to approach the Capitol building heavily armed.
Yes.
They
were allowed to go inside in the
right. Yes. Now we've got unarmed protesters, people of color now, though.
Yes.
Standing quietly, peacefully. Well, I mean, not quietly, but at least not aggressively. Within a designated area. They have these protests. These protests are are permitted, and they are held in a specific spot. And they say that it will be from this time to this time. And for the most part, when that time is over, they leave. Then there are some, usually bad actors show up afterwards. But the powers that be want to put the blame on the whole protest, the completely peaceful protest that has already broken up.
Or Trump. I'm trying to give him the deference he's due and use his correct title. That motherfucker Trump was embarrassed by hiding in the bunker and turning out the lights. So he had to make a big show of going across the street to the church. So what did he do? They sent out, the curfew wasn't over. People were peaceful, and yet they were gassed and rubber bullet shot to move him out of His Majesty's way. So he could go and stand in front of the church holding up a Bible upside down, one that he's clearly never read and doesn't understand anything about. And his supporters, his heretical Christian supporters, dominionist supporters, his extreme right-wing evangelical supporters applauded that. But the bishop of that
diocese,
Episcopal Episcopal diocese, if I'm using the term correctly.
Yeah, that's what he is. He was a diocese.
She was outraged. They didn't inform her of that. And it's all for show. It's the lack of justice is a virtue that we've talked about.
Yes.
The lack of justice in all of this. There's the police officers cannot be sued. And there was a bill, there have been bills to change that, to hold them more accountable, which have been blocked. Now,
wonder who blocked that.
We have friends who are current and former law enforcement.
Sure.
And I've talked to them about their approach to de-escalating situations. I'm not seeing de-escalation practices. Not when you say light them up and you shoot people on their own porch. I'm not seeing de-escalation.
No, and on the other hand, there are outstanding examples of good policing, like in Flint.
Mm-hmm.
Amazingly enough, here in Michigan, where the cops mingle with the crowd, march with them, stand by them, allow them a peaceful protest, showing their support and giving their protection to a peaceful protest.
Yes.
So
and I think the police chiefs, the officers, the sheriffs who have done that are demonstrating franchise, taking the initiative to do the right thing, help de-escalate the situation. That doesn't make real permanent systemic change.
No, and I'm glad you used the word, because that's really what these protests are about. These protests aren't about George Floyd. George Floyd is just a catalyst.
Yes.
These are, and it's about police brutality, but it's about changing the system that allows it to perpetuate.
Yes.
That's what, so what's so hard to engage about that from these police, from these law enforcement people? What is so difficult to listen to that they have to be driven from the street with weapons? Why isn't there I don't know, some kind of a sit-down meeting with members of the clergy in the local community, or some of the more well-known activists? Why are you so afraid to sit down and talk with these people?
And those have happened before.
Yeah.
And yet this occurs and recurs and happens again. And real systemic change requires, in policing, requires training, budget. It in a lot of ways. I know people have talked a lot about the militarization of police, but the equipment part of militarization is not as significant an issue as the mindset militarization.
Yeah, but one affects the, as far as I'm concerned, one affects the other.
They do, because if you got it, it'd be a waste to not use it. I think there's
Well, I think it's more than that. I think there's a deeper psychological thing. Is like you dress somebody like a soldier. You dress somebody like he's going into combat, right? We've talked about this.
Yes.
Clothes do make the man.
Yes.
Put somebody in combat dress and you send them out in a vehicle, they feel like they're going into combat and they are ready to be in combat.
And the Secretary of Defense referred to the United States as the battle space.
Yes.
The battle space. And
I saw somebody post on the Twitter, somebody replied to a Facebook post about, people complaining about getting hit with rubber bullets and whatnot. And he said, well, if you go into the battleground, you expect to do battle. They didn't expect to do battle. That's the thing. It was a peaceful protest, a demonstration of an injustice.
Yes.
That's what they were there for. And they were met with combat forces.
Yes. And calling out the National Guard, which the governors can do, but Trump, I have to use his correct title, that motherfucker Trump wants to invoke the Insurrection Act so he can essentially violate the Posse Comitatus Act, which prohibits the deployment of U.S. military on American soil for law enforcement purposes. He wants to do that because because he's an authoritarian, and he and that kiss-ass Barr, the Attorney General, are already putting out feelers, laying the groundwork for declaring the election in November invalid. And
we've seen this coming.
Yes. And if they do that, if they do that, these protests on the street I'll be out on the street.
This is where I want to see that if Trump tries to declare the election invalid or postpone the election or declare martial law, to restore order so that we can have a fair election, that is a dictator talking. And I want all you AR-15 toting assholes out there, I want to see you in the street marching towards the White House instead of standing in front of it.
Yes.
Because that is the thing that you have been crying about, and the reason you say we need to defend our Second Amendment rights. That is what you have been talking about this whole time. Now I want to see you put up or shut the fuck up.
Yes.
I'm talking to all of you guys out there. You hear me? Fight me on this. It's so, oh God, that so pisses me off. It's the hypocrisy of it.
It's self-serving. It's I'm spitting mad. I'm so mad from this. I'm so angry. And the likelihood that that's going to happen increases day by day, I think.
Well, because
terrible scenario.
Trump sees his what little support he had slipping away. Nobody can. The people who have been making this particular argument all along can't make it anymore. They're, the excuses are crumbling.
Yeah.
So what has he got left? He can't depend on enough votes and enough electoral votes to win. And if he doesn't win, he's going to prison.
Yes, he will. He will. He'll be investigated. He can be charged. He and his family, the whole motherfucking Trump crime family, they're all going to prison.
And I don't think he knows what to do otherwise. I don't think he knows what else to do. He's going to cling and he's going to claw at the door frames.
Yes.
And probably, and McConnell, if he doesn't get voted out, will be right there with him, patting him on the back and saying, no, it's going to be all right. I got this for you.
Yeah.
Screw all those guys.
I asked some people who are former military, if what happens if there's an illegal order, and they're all trained. The officers certainly are trained in how to refuse an illegal order.
Cops are not. The cops aren't necessarily.
No, and the cops are not trained in a lot of things that the military are trained in. If members of the military shoot civilians in an unwarranted way, not in unwarranted way, there are consequences. There's certainly at least an investigation and an actual investigation. If the Insurrection Act requires, as I understand it, requires the governors to actually ask for the intervention of the federal government and the military. And
and this is, I think, where it's going to get ugly, is that the president can determine that the governors have lost control and are unable.
Yes. And what do you bet that he will decide it's only governors and only states that will vote against him?
Well, or have Democratic leadership to make
exactly. And so, in Michigan, that woman in Michigan, as he referred to our governor, because he couldn't remember her name, probably because his dementia is only getting worse, or his Adderall addiction, or whatever the hell is going on with him, slurring his words and forgetting words, and but he'll send any excuse, he will do that. And I guarantee you, blue states are not going to be pushovers either. Now, we have said before that the weapon fetishists really don't stand a chance against the army if the army was really sent in. But to my point about an illegal order, if he sends in the army, how many of them are going to fire on citizens? How many of them are going to do that? He doesn't have that. Trump, to use his correct title, that motherfucker Trump does not have the absolute support of the military. And you can't have a coup, which suspending the election would be, or sending in occupation forces into the states would be. He can't do that unless he has the support of the military. And he does not have this universal support of the military, certainly not of the officers.
God, I hope not. But here's the thing, and we're getting close to our time. Yeah, I worry about if he actually calls in the actual military, because these guys who are in the basements with their guns, polishing their barrels, waiting for that moment.
Was that a euphemism?
Probably.
Yeah.
It's so accurate. I'm not even sure it's a euphemism.
Yeah.
But if the federal government starts marching across the border, I want all you guys, and I'm talking to all of you guys, if you have been posting to my feed or somebody else's about, you're a Second Amendment constitutionalist. If you're a constitutionalist, if you are going to sit there and give me the excuses necessary to watch federal troops move in on a duly elected governor of a state, I call you a coward. I call you a liar. And that's all I have to say about that.
Yep. Well, and we've ranted now
Yeah.
for almost
Well,
half
and
an
obviously
hour.
we don't have any answers. We can't fix it by
No.
ourselves.
But what we can say to all our friends is be safe, be well, take care of yourselves. I'm concerned about a new spike in the coronavirus in
Oh
a
yeah.
week, 2 weeks, 3
It's
weeks.
almost inevitable now.
I'm
And
concerned about
unfortunately,
that.
that's going to come around election time. And that's,
Yeah.
I think, is going to feed into the excuses to postpone.
Yeah. So take care of yourselves and know that we're with you.
And
Honor
further,
and chivalry requires us to do the right thing, and that means standing by you. We are loyal to the principles of chivalry and the principles upon which this country was founded, the ideals upon which it was founded, not the implementation, because it was, as I said, founded and steeped in slavery and racism, and which needs to be expunged. For America to live up to its promise, that's what has to happen, and we're with you in whatever way we can be.
and even on a personal level, you've seen us, you've heard us. If you are our friend, even if you're not our friend, a person of color who feels you're in danger, in need, we are there. Come to us. If you see us and we can help, we will.
Yep. We can use our privilege for something and intervene in a situation. If that can be of effect, or even if it can't, we'll certainly try. If you need a place, if you need support, if you need something, let us know. This is a serious situation.
Yeah. And we're serious about it as much as we can be.
Yeah.
So stay safe until we hear from you again, or you hear from us again. Be thou
A good night
and true.